My name is Stephanie Phillips. I'm from Cleveland. I am not in recovery, but my sister has been sober for it'll be 14 years in August of this year.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie, for coming out. So your sister's in recovery. So let's talk about your childhood together.
Okay.
Just briefly what it was like.
So Erin is 2 years older than me. We grew up in what would be the epitome of middle class. We had a great childhood. My mom was a teacher. My dad owned car dealerships and then worked for car dealerships. And I played sports growing up. Erin did as well. We both got good grades. It was a normal, very normal life. I don't even remember as a kid, truthfully, like drugs or alcohol were never even around. We were never exposed to it on a continuous basis. Mm-hmm. So then Erin graduated, obviously 2 years ahead of me, went to Ohio State, and I followed in her footsteps and graduated from Ohio State as well. I would say fast forward our 20s, we used to go out. We partied, but nothing crazy, I would say. We never really got in trouble. It was more... what I would say at the time was weekends, but then I think as Erin's addiction probably developed, hers became less just on the weekends and more continuously. January of 2008, Erin had gone to a doctor and was prescribed prescription pain meds. Prior to that, yes, drank, dabbled with things, I would say, but the opiates really what, how we have this story today. I'm at work, she calls me, and this is Erin, and says, do you have a couple minutes to talk? I said, yeah, what's up? I'll take a break or whatever. And she said, I have a problem. I'm addicted to pain pills and I'm going to rehab. I'm like, what? No. So partly is because Erin, Brian, and I were very close. My parents are very close too. But as far as going out and all the time, we were, we did. Like, we lived together. So questions come like, how did I not see this? And she's my sister. We've done how did I not see this? And so you learn how to deal with that on, just yourself and she will tell you because she didn't want me to see it. So she hid it. She learned, she knew how to hide it, that sort of thing. So, So she comes home. Yeah, she calls, says, I'm checking myself into rehab. I've made all the arrangements. I'm going to Glen Bay out east. I'm sure someone maybe tell differently. I don't know of any of my family that I can think of as a kid that I was told like they were an addict or alcoholic. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, our childhood, it was good as others, but it was that we were kids. We didn't have any of the adult problems. We were never burdened with that as kids. So I'm like, okay. And I will say with all that too, like, you hear the stigma about it. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, well, you're not like a real addict. I don't know. Like, I'm trying to justify, like, right. Oh, you need I see. You're on prescription pain meds and you need help with them. You know what I mean? Uh-huh. I remember she had a pain bottle, and I'm going to say there were like 8 or 10 pills left in it. And so I told her, I said, when you leave, when mom and dad come get you, just leave this here and I'll get rid of it. We'll make, I thought like, we'll go through the house, make sure if there's anything, we'll get rid of it. So I come home from work, she's, my parents had taken her, and I see the pill bottle there. I'm like, what? Where? I'm like, okay. So, and then that was something I learned too, is she's like, I was an addict. Like, I took the pills. I'm like, all of them?
Right.
And then I've learned that a lot of times when people go check themselves into rehab, they're either high or drunk. Yeah. I'm like, really, that's where the addiction, that's when it starts clicking, is it's not, like, I could say, well, I'm not taking those. Erin couldn't. She knew that those were there, and there was not a chance she was leaving without taking those. So I think it was the first Sunday, and obviously our family was very supportive. One, we had no idea what to expect, but we were there for Erin, and we wanted to let Erin know that we were going to be there for her. So the first Sunday we went out there, and they did a fantastic job. I think we went into like an auditorium. A gentleman talked to us there. He said, if addicts can put the amount of time and effort they do in their addiction into anything else, what a successful person they would be. And I not only did I hear that, but I've seen it happen time and time again, and you couldn't be more right. So we went to then a small group, I think is what it was called. It was my parents. I think there was another like family there, my parents, Brian, and I, and one-on-one, we could sit in like the circle or whatever, and it was Erin and like me, and I think they asked questions or like feelings and things like that. And at that time, I think I had no idea. I mean, it hurt. It bothered me. I wish that I could help her. I don't know why I couldn't. You know, there were so many things, but it also really hurt because I realized how much she had lied to me. And so part of that too was that. And you know, in tears, my parents talked to her, very accepting. Brian, who has been part of this journey the entire time as well. She completes her 28 days. Brian and I go out to pick her up. We drive back, and like, again, I have no idea what's going to happen when she comes home. What do we do type thing? And we're like, I'm at this point very excited to see her. Like, all right, what do you want to do? Do you want to go grab something to eat? What do you want to do? And she's like, I need to go to a meeting. I'm like, what? Like, you just checked yourself, you're no, 90 meetings in 90 days. Okay. And we dropped her off at a meeting and went back and picked her up afterwards. And then I think we did get something to eat. But it was, in some extent, I don't want to put words in Erin's mouth. She had no idea what to do when she came out of recovery, other than not drinking, taking pills, doing anything like that. That was the only thing she knew. So she went to 90 meetings in 90 days. I know she did. I feel like she went to a couple meetings. A Friday night group became her like home group, and I think that was good for her from a social aspect. But she, made friends in recovery and realized that there are other people that are in recovery, which was very good. After leaving rehab, Erin realized that she truly thought that her life's purpose was getting into the recovery, and she couldn't have been more right if you would have told her that's what she was going to do.
Right.
So she goes to Columbus. So she applied to go to Hazelden in Minnesota, and I think get her clinical counseling license. So she went there. She got her degree. We got to fly out and see her when she graduated. And when I found out I was pregnant, she said, there's no way I'm staying here. I'm coming to Cleveland. Like, there's no way. My niece and a beautiful daughter, there's no way that I'm not going to be part of her life. So
right.
That's why we got her back to Cleveland. So January 15th, 2013, Morgan was born and has made the world a better place since then.
Yes.
But so I think, we worked, I don't know, as an adult, you work, you do whatever type thing. And Erin had come back and actually worked where she went to rehab out in at Glen Bay. That's where she went and worked. And that is where she told us that I think we should open, she came with Brian and I, she said, I think we should open a sober living house. We then learned, as Erin said, not everyone can come home to a place like I did. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, if someone's, if they're an addict or alcoholic, your family, you can see, because seeing it, some of the treatment that Erin went to, we saw their families there. We weren't the only ones dealing with this. And she goes, well, Steph, what if their family's alcoholics or they drink, but I'm like, well, then stop drinking, people. It's not that easy.
Right,
or
right. It's not
the exact
that
opposite. What if you have a family that totally supports you, but unfortunately the addict or alcoholic has burned that bridge so many times that they can't. You at some point have to start making boundaries. So they want to support whoever, but it doesn't work under their roof. So Erin said, I want to open a sober living home. People need a place to go after recovery. Okay, how do we do this? And as I told you, my dad was a salesman. Well, I think I found who has some of the salesman in her because, all right, let's open a house. So I start doing all the research, and Erin is very smart that when she comes to, has an idea, she's done a little bit of research because all the questions that we start having, she's able to answer. So we start looking. We knew we wanted like rooms that two people could live in, shared living, but based on specs of the room, they had to be this size, this and that. Where do you buy a house? Erin made it very clear that if we were going to do this, it would be a place that she would go to. That just because you're in recovery, you don't have to live in some dump that's not clean. Isn't that what addicts and alcoholics, that's what you think of, not someone who's trying to stay sober. Dirty places, overrun, that sort of thing. So we found a place on the west side of Cleveland, and it's a 3-unit. So that house has 8 women in it, and at the time the third floor was what we call our house manager, and that was Erin. And that's how we started. So we bought the house, we painted, did all the work on it, because we had fortunately through lots of help from family and friends, we were able to buy the house. And then it became, we painted everything, we bought everything, we took donations for anyone, this and that, and still have no real idea what we're doing, but we're going to make a go of it. And so on September 14th, 2014, we opened our first house. Erin was the house manager. We had 8 beds, and the first girl that came to our house was coming through the courts in lieu of jail. They were offering her recovery housing but to us it was one condition: they have to come in a cop car. And we're like, you got to be kidding us! Like we're trying not to, because, and I say that jokingly, and I am 100% serious because of the stigma that's involved around it.
Yes,
we are telling someone we are opening a sober living home. Why in their head do they think, oh, there's going to be bugs of drugs and alcohol there? Apparently you don't understand what that whole sober part means. Go to the crack house down the street, sure. Come to our house, we don't allow it. You know what I mean? We test to make sure people we are keeping, but still came with it. And so so we're like, could she come like first thing in the morning? You know what I mean? We had no idea. So she comes, quickly the house fills up as far as residents. And, I think pretty soon after we started on a wait list that there were with word, but it was a good house. We offered a good program. We don't do, the house managers have to have a certification, but as far as like treatment and things, that is also, we are to provide a safe and stable environment for people to live in. And that's what we do. And it has grown since then.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
yes, and it has been
has.
wonderful. I have learned a lot. We own 6 houses now. We now are the proud owners of an RV that travels around the state of Ohio, which is probably one of the coolest projects that we've taken on. Again, so over the course of from 2014 to 2018, I believe, there's 6 houses now that we manage in the Cleveland area. In 2020, because you're in a pandemic and you're like, wonder what we should do next. So of course, Erin had way too much time on her hands and said, I think we should buy an RV and travel around the state of Ohio to get stories. I'm like, well, I think it's awesome. Well, what's with the RV? And she's like, because we need to go around and we needed this and that and blah, blah, blah. So she starts RV shopping and sends my dad and a buddy of his to New York to go buy an RV. My dad's never driven an RV. You can do it, Dad. I know you can. And they drive this back here. And what On the Road of Recovery has done for me, for someone that has been involved. So Erin will be sober. It'll be 14 years in August. It has opened my eyes this past year to what recovery actually is. And I am the biggest fan. I told my husband, Brian, I said I'm going to call myself a super fan. There's been 90 videos posted, and I've watched every single one of them. And every single one gets better. I learn more. I've learned recovery, what the hope that people have is something that is totally, it's not replaceable, but you have to do it yourself. Just like in a lot of other things, you got to find yourself, make yourself happy, and that's how you're going to make other people happy.
Yeah, absolutely.
It absolutely is. It has been wonderful.
Thank you so much for your support.
Yes.
Because I've also watched all of them.
Yes, a few times over probably, huh?
Yes, but you're right. There's that pattern. I mean, there's so much that I have even learned, and I'm in recovery myself, and
Sure.
I have even learned some that blows my mind with these videos. So, I mean, starting this entire project was a dream for me.
Yeah.
It's an amazing job, and I can travel in an RV,
Right.
and find people with stories that need to be heard. So,
And that's, I think part of it too is, and from where it was 14 years ago to now, it has come a long way.
Yeah.
However, I even see a commercial through the state of Ohio that they're running about stopping the stigma. We have so much further to go.
Yes.
It's progressing, and I think when people find recovery, that community is unlike any other. And that the recovery community itself is not where help is needed. That you guys, that you've figured out, you've mastered it. I have never seen a group that can support each other through and through, even through hiccups along the way. And I'm not even necessarily, yes, relapses, but stumbles across the way. And not afraid to ask for help. That is something that as an adult that is tremendous, is being able to ask for help. And I think maybe as an addict or alcoholic, from where you came from, that what I would say like your rock bottom. One of the girls I absolutely love, she's like, give me a shovel, I'll keep digging further. She was hysterical. She's like, I hit my rock bottom and then you just keep giving me a shovel and I could keep I'm like, yes, I could see that, you know what I mean? But that is strength to want something different, especially some of the stories that the kid, they're the people now, but as children, they didn't know any different. So like when you talk about addiction, I can tell you addiction does not discriminate because I just told you about the story of my sister and I growing up. So how did Erin go into an addiction and I didn't? Even just from the great support that we had, loving unconditional parents that really would give us anything, but not in a spoiled brat, we were just handed everything type thing.
Right.
We were, so how does that happen?
So, from watching the stories and obviously becoming a huge advocate for recovery, with your sister being in recovery for almost 14 years, how do you think that your idea of addiction has changed? As in the whole idea that it is a complex and chronic disease?
So I would say, I don't think it's such a choice as people like to refer to. You have a choice. So one is, and it honestly, it breaks my heart. I really struggle with hearing the stories of how bad people's lives were as children. Partly because as an adult, we can deal with growing up and being older, but it is heartbreaking to me that people don't have the childhood that I had, or the childhood that my daughter has, or the childhood that a lot of us have, that at 7 years old, someone's drinking. My daughter's 9 years old. I couldn't, in no world, but that's my world. And so for me to judge, maybe let's fast forward, that 7-year-old's now 15 and now he's 20 and now he's an addict. And I'm going to judge that person without walking in their shoes, without knowing. How do you know any? So people say, you know better. Erin knew better than to take pain pills. Okay, maybe she did. Tell me about the kid who doesn't know any better. So we're still judge them the same way. And that's where I also think, I will tell you probably one of the things that I have learned the most is that mental health was more shunned. And I truly believe that we, again, are making great strides in the mental health world, but we got a long way to go with that too. So there are a lot of factors that I don't necessarily think that people chose to start doing it. Our teenage years are very influential. If you listen to most of the people that talk, the first time they tried something was, I'm going to say, junior high school type thing. And I don't think it was, I'm going to drink this and I'm going to now throw the next 15, 10, 20 years of my life down the drain and then I'll figure out what I want to do. I don't think that was the intention with the first sip of alcohol, similar to probably the first time I tried it, that, I'm silly, blah, blah, and that was the end of it. Except for when you're dealing with maybe some home life issues, or you yourself aren't comfortable with who you are or unsure of this and that, and then you're given a drug or an alcohol, and man, doesn't it just take all that pain away?
Right.
So we're now putting ourselves that these people who are using, is it that they're using to hurt everyone else, or are they using to cover up the hurt that they are going through?
Yeah.
So it's pretty hard to judge a whole group of people based on, and so it is continually learning. I think the education of it, the stories. There's one story that you guys did, and it was wonderful, but it's the son of someone who supports someone in recovery, and listening to him talk about he would go into the bathroom before school and cry. And then he would oftentimes get in trouble for being late to school. That is heartbreaking. That is absolutely gut-wrenching, that there are children that are going into schools to cry because that's where they feel comfortable, that's where they feel safe, and then maybe being judged at school, and then they start down that path. And some don't. You see the exact, others that they see what happens at home and they don't want it they will never do that. But we're young and we're influential at that age, and some of us go different ways, you know what I mean? And then let's not forget about the fact that like drugs and alcohol, they are addictive. So now we've got all these other things. Now you actually have things that once you start, your body wants. There's the whole other line that doctors, so people that we trust from a medical standpoint, well, the doctor says I need to take these pills. And then the doctor all of a sudden, because they're cracking down and that doctor says I can't get any more pills. And it's very easy for me to sit here and say, well, then just stop using them. Okay. And then when your mind and everything else, and and I say this in a very good way, thank goodness that Erin truthfully had, I think to some extent, the money, she had a good job to support her habit. Because I've learned this, how many times the opiates get cut off and it's the heroin. I don't think people are like, yep, heroin's what I want to do. But when your body is telling you you need it and all you can think about is that drug, go to get it. And then you're going to get help to figure out how to get off it. Like, I do believe people do not do things with just this ill intention. Sometimes, sure, but not the majority of the time. It's, I'm going to make myself right and then I'm going to get help. What if you talked to someone that was actively using and told them, I'm just, when you're ready, because I do believe that being forced into recovery, I would like people to end their addiction early, but I do understand that it's your own, I think you mentally and physically have to be prepared for it as the addict. You got to be ready. But what if there was a plan just saying, so here's when you're ready, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, and then you have this, and all while this, and yes, I know everyone's differently, meaning you're going to go to inpatient treatment and you're going to get the help that you need, but then you're going to move on to outpatient treatment. And while you're in outpatient treatment, we're also going to provide a safe place for you to live. And from there, you can get a job. You can open a checking account. You can buy a car. Things that I take for granted because as an adult, I've had them. I've had them because I've worked for them and because but I've had them. Another thing that totally surprised me, which I understand why, is like nobody has a checking account. And why does nobody have a check? I've had a checking account since I've been 18 years, maybe even younger. I think my mom and I, opened one. Why didn't you? Well, you don't really need one. When you're peddling here, there, and everywhere, you don't, as an addict or alcoholic, you don't tend to have a ton of money in the savings or checking accounts. So you don't really, I'm sure there are some that have had checking and savings accounts, but things like that so now you make this plan and maybe the person's not ready right then. But what if as you're thinking, it's time, I need to get sober, it's time. I also don't believe that all addicts deserve to go to jail and prison because of their addiction. We need to start actually helping, addressing it. But I don't think that because you robbed someplace while you were high, that doesn't exempt you from the fact that you robbed somebody. And so I watch how I say that because I don't, so the first girl who moved to our house and many since then, so she had served her time, but basically instead of having to stay in jail, let's get her to a sober home. Because just throwing people into jail, because I've also learned that you can learn more in jail or prison. The fact that we're actually talking about it, how different is that than, let's even say 10 years ago?
Oh, for sure.
And the stories, start showing them to people in jails and prisons.
Yeah.
Give them a little bit of hope that, I might not be the only person that maybe doesn't want to continue to live this life. And and it's easy for me to say, don't let someone judge you. They have no clue. They're their own ignorance. But I don't know what that feeling of shame to some extent is, because I think as an addict, and you guys process your feelings, you do miraculous in getting through everything. There's a fine line between guilt, because I would be willing to bet most addicts and alcoholics have guilt. However, what are you going to do with guilt? You can be guilty for the rest of life, what you did to your family or your friends, this and that, yourself. Or you can realize that exists and do the next right thing. You use your guilt in a positive way. Exactly. The other thing that I've learned through this is I really wish people would stop judging people on medication-assisted treatment. To say that someone who correctly uses medicine, because I know it can be abused, but for someone who correctly uses Suboxone, so they're the same person that is using heroin all the time,
right?
And they're not sober. I don't agree with that. I think that we want to make our own definitions of things, and because I believe something, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to try and convince you. What if I try and convince you medication-assisted treatment is the same, in my opinion, as 12-step, I think, is one, faith-based, and I'm learning different recoveries, because recovery doesn't have to be the same. That is what is so cool. All of your recovery stories are different, but the way in which you almost pull from different places, I feel like. I think that there are some people that use 12-step, but I would assume religion is involved in that as well. There are some people, I know the higher power, what that higher power is, that's different for everyone.
Yep.
And there's nothing wrong with that. There are resources out there. Don't be ashamed. Don't be embarrassed.
It's just crazy to me that you didn't know anything about it,
Yep.
and you have never experienced addiction. Yet with like education and educating yourself and getting involved and advocating for recovery, you have gained so much insight.
Absolutely. If you would have told me how many years ago to be owning sober living homes,
Yeah,
I
right.
think, well, really? How'd that happen? I couldn't be more proud. Just like other when you do something for a good cause, I couldn't be more proud that I am part of this, and I just get to be along for the ride. I have become the biggest advocate of On the Road of Recovery because of how genuine everyone is. Nobody's telling a story about anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to tell your story. I'm going to tell my story. The same way everyone else sitting here, they're telling their story. And when you live it, it's easier. It's because it's what you've been through type thing.
Right.
But the happiness, the joy, the gratitude, the words that I get to hear, ask 10 random people on the street, you're not going to hear gratitude, happiness, joy, you know what I mean? And it's not the words that are being said, it's the way in which they say it. You can feel the relief, you can hear it, and it is just absolutely wonderful.
Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for coming out and sharing, your journey in the recovery realm, I guess.
Absolutely.
And learning about recovery.
And like I said, I was super nervous to come. I am a behind the scenes type person. That is where I enjoy being. And when I started doing this, and man, would you believe, I thought like, well, I mean, do they really want me to do this? Like, should I talk, this or that type thing? And I literally thought to myself, if someone can overcome an addiction, alcoholism, something like that, and be who they are, then I certainly can go sit in front of a camera for a little bit of time and tell my story in hopes that I'm just another shot at catching one person. I always think when you put a video up, if that video gets that person, that one gets that one, you know what I mean? And just keep. The only way we're going to get anywhere, I feel, like I said.
Right.
Yeah. So keep the advocacy, keep talking to people. Everyone keep doing what you should be doing. Do the next do the next right thing. I'm going to learn them. I'm going to learn them. Exactly.
Well, we are very, very glad that you came out because, like I said, that you touched on so many important topics that need to be addressed. And
yes.
We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.